Hello and a very warm welcome to the late breaking F1 podcast presented by Harry Yeed, Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking. Mexican Grand Prix preview today, a little bit earlier recording in the week at least. It will be out at the same time as normal for you, but we thought we'd take advantage of us all being together still.
I mean, we have got to do big flight. Big
Flight today.
Yes.
Big flight day.
So folks, we are... This will all remain normal, just for you. But for us, we are desperately trying to get this done before our Airbnb closes and we have to scamper off to the airport.
Many hours in the air.
Thank you, though, to America. We've had a lovely time.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw indeed. Let's start out with this one question, though. Sam, how vulnerable is Max Verstappen this weekend, taking into account what we saw at Austin?
I think what we saw at Austin was a bit of an illusion, a mystical appearance.
Okay.
Because I think from the naked eye, and if you don't follow all the background news of Formula One, I mean, you're listening to this podcast, so maybe you do, but news is quite complimentary to us, really. We're just getting to chat waffle. But if you don't pay attention to all the news stories, you're not keeping up with maybe what goes on with all the technical regulation side of things, you might have thought, that looked close between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton at the end, and Norris wasn't too far off, and qualifying was very, very good. And to make those simple observations, you would be 100% correct. But I think there is a very different story that had been told at COTA, and that is, obviously, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc both disqualified for riding their car too low and wearing the plank too thin, breaking the technical regulations. And a lot of other drivers probably lucky to get away with this. Red Bull have come out and said a statement that they have run their car much higher than normal and altered the setups dramatically on both cars to ensure that the cars themselves, come the end of the weekend, are fully compliant with FIA regulations. They were aware that the plank was going to rub. The track is so bumpy, despite it being a great track and the surface is really good, it's a very bumpy track, and this causes wear. That combined with the fact it's a very windy track. We were all there. You see the giant flags, which are real. They're not CGI.
Hey.
They are huge. They're like British towns flying in the air. They move a lot, and I imagine they weigh a lot too. So this wind, when it comes along, it can push the car further to the ground, depending on what area the track is being hit. Again, further wearing those planks. Now, Red Bull, fully aware of this, raised the car dramatically, which again loses performance. It scrubs off performance when you raise the car. Lowering the car is better because it creates more ground effect downforce. Also combining with that Max Verstappen had serious brake issues. You could hear over the team radio just how frustrated he was at the braking issues, and he was nursing that the whole way, which, I mean, credit to him. Car set up wrong. They've removed performance. The brakes aren't working. He's still won by 2 seconds, and he had to come through the pack to do it as well. Shows just how good Red Bull are at the moment. I don't think they're in any trouble when it comes to Mexico. It's a powerhouse for Red Bull. Their car thrives in the higher altitude. They've always loved it there. Even during Mercedes dominance, it was always their playground. That and Monaco were pretty much the two places that they always thought we'll get a win here. And I have no doubt that Max Verstappen will go and do it again, although a tiny part of me would absolutely adore Sergio Perez to win at his home Grand Prix at least once.
I would not like that to happen. And that's nothing against Perez, but the world would explode.
Mexico would lift off into space.
I don't want that to happen.
They would become their own planet Mexico.
See you later, Mexico.
And Sergio would become the space emperor. Deservedly so. So Galactic Emperor Perez deserves the win, and I do think that Red Bull are actually going to be even stronger, more stronger than we've seen. I think this might be the best race that they'll have from before Qatar. I think it's going to go back to those levels.
I don't know how we managed to get onto Perez Palpatine, but I love it.
Execute Order 11. I am the Red Bull.
Harry, do you think Verstappen is vulnerable?
I don't think he's ever vulnerable.
Even a little bit?
Even a little bit. Well, he was quite vulnerable last weekend, and he still won both times.
It'd been interesting to see, like, obviously started from 6th, as you referenced, Sam, and had to come through the pack a little bit, and Norris led quite a few laps at the beginning. What that gap would have been if he started from pole.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, we saw him starting from pole in the sprint race, right? And that was 10 seconds.
Well, exactly. And if he had started from pole and didn't have the brake issues, etc., I'm not sure that gap would have been very, very small. But you're right, Sam's right. I think this is a bit of a Red Bull favourite circuit. They all seem to go really well here. I don't suspect any vulnerability going into this weekend, and they don't even have the added silliness of a sprint to deal with. So
True.
they've got over that as well, or they don't have to deal with that. So yeah, you'd have to place your bets, as you should do all year, on Max Verstappen and Red Bull. But it's a hot place, Mexico.
Tis warm.
It's warmer than here,
Madness.
which is
Tis higher.
how?
Yeah. I don't know how, because it's 1 million degrees in Austin.
1,000,001 in Mexico.
Plus one more than you can ever say.
Yeah. Infinity plus one. So there's reliability, things like that. If there were brake issues in Austin, maybe there would be similar things in Mexico. But yeah, you'd have to say that it looks pretty good for Verstappen coming into this weekend, as it has done most of this year.
I was looking at a stat earlier of laps led, and he's led a lot of laps this year.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
led more laps than anyone in history. But it's the percentage of the laps led that is remarkable. He's led like 74% of all laps that have taken place this year. To put that in a little bit of context, Schumacher in 2004 was just over 60%.
Oh my lord, that's 3 in every 4 laps he leads
Yeah,
across an
Blimey.
entire year of racing.
it's madness.
Yeah.
Do you think, Harry, that with Mexico and the altitude, we are used to seeing power unit struggles there? Not at Red Bull, just across the grid. What approach do you think Red Bull should take to that? Are they just going to go all guns blazing, or similar to the US where they made adjustments for the circuit? Do you think that they might play it safe and just look to do almost what they did this weekend?
I would probably go for the latter, because they're in that privileged position where they can. And
What do they lose?
what exactly? A race win, I guess, and whatever. They've won everything but one this year. But if your car's that good and you can afford to make these adjustments to make it slower but also more reliable, then why would you not do that?
There's a lot of logic in it.
All the logic. So I don't suspect they're just going to go in and be like, well, if it blows up, it blows up. I don't think that's their.
That doesn't sound very Red Bull, does it?
No. So yeah, I think they of all the teams, they're probably the one in this position who can really afford to, tune back the engine, etc., or whatever it is, brakes, to make sure they make the finish and then still win.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
I am gonna. You know what? Usually it's cynical, Ben. I'm gonna be mildly optimistic, Ben, and say
optimistic.
he's a little bit vulnerable.
Okay.
Which for the I don't know, based on this season, is probably more vulnerable than he usually is. I think overall the teams are closer, certainly compared to the first half of the season. I was thinking back randomly earlier to the Canadian Grand Prix, which I think Verstappen won by just over 10 seconds. It might have been 10, 11 seconds. And I remember at the time, the whole discussion was, wow, that was close. It was a 10-second win for Verstappen, but because it was mixed in with so many 20-second wins and 25-second wins, 15-second wins, it was perceived to be like it was one of the closest races, as sad as that sounds, of the first half of the season. But actually now, if you look at the last sort of 5 races, you've got the Italian Grand Prix, Verstappen won by 6 seconds. Singapore, obviously, he didn't win at all. Japan is the one that he did very well at. That was like 19 seconds. Qatar was 4 seconds, and the US was a little over a second. So it's heading in the right direction if you're looking for parity in the sport. Obviously, he's still very good, and I think he's still very much the favourite. But I wouldn't be surprised if a team couldn't spring a surprise. I know you say that Red Bull have done very well here, and that's very true. It's a difficult one to predict, though, at least. I think it throws up a few more variables because of the altitude compared to, say, a standard European race where if Verstappen turns up, you know he's probably going to win. Here, there's always a little bit of an unknown. There was 1 year, like 5 years ago, where Renault turned up and they were really good for no reason. And that sort of thing can
Unlike them.
I know. Do that. And 5 years later, we're still waiting for the next time they do that. But
oh no.
Yeah, I think he might be just a little bit vulnerable.
Well, I'm going down your route then. I hope you're right. Also, I'm going to do it delayed. Hold on. Got to clear the throat, everyone, because I'm well. Stagman! Oh, you can hear the hoarseness in it. And I had to prepare.
Horseman.
Horsey McForceface is on the podcast, everyone. But that was painful. That hurt. I did it for you.
If you look at the record books for the US Grand Prix, it will forever say that Lando Norris was the closest challenger to Max Verstappen. But of course, in reality, we know it was very much Lewis Hamilton.
David Coulthard.
No, it was not David Coulthard.
He cannot always be the number one contender for everything.
Always not.
The closest.
He's never been the closest.
Because his jaw is so big. Physically the closest.
Will Lewis Hamilton be the closest challenger to Verstappen again this weekend?
It's a really tricky one. And I think where strengths and weaknesses of the cars lie are going to play a big factor. I do think that if they continue testing parts for 2024 and they continue to see the success that they saw in COTA, there is every chance that Mercedes takes another step forward. Obviously, that was the first race that they properly ran any upgrades for a little while. I think they worked. Well, at least they did on Hamilton's car, and he got the best out of them. And as we referenced this in the review podcast for COTA, James Allison is essentially saying that this 2023 car is a dirty little mistake, and he very much wishes to focus on next year's availability. Thank you. He's righting the wrongs.
8 more of those and you get how many Otmar has.
No babies in a month, though, everyone. I mean, I've lost my train of thought entirely after that thing. My point here is that I think Mercedes, as we've mentioned time after time again, they've never 100% been the definite second fastest car, but because they are always there, then they're always in contention. And I think Lewis Hamilton will be even more motivated after his #mood post on Instagram, where, of course, both him and Leclerc were disqualified. He had a phenomenal Grand Prix, starting third, finished second by a long shot, only 1.5 away from Verstappen at the end, and the competition behind him was gone. He had no challenges at all. So I really do think that a slightly angry but motivated Hamilton in a Mercedes that looks a little bit rejuvenated could really be a threat, especially if, as we've discussed here, Red Bull need to make sacrifices again to the setup or the car or the balance to execute a safe finish for the Grand Prix. It's awful that we're having to make sure that in the statements we're saying that Red Bull need to weaken themselves just for a car to even be near them. But that is where we are at the moment, and I think it's not impossible. I do think the Iggy's are most likely to be the more consistent team behind them.
Yeah, I think there's definitely reasons to be encouraged if you're Lewis Hamilton. I think the US Grand Prix was race pace Mercedes, or at least Lewis Hamilton's best race of the year so far. Yeah. I think they
Singapore was good, but I think
Singapore they were good. Yeah, that's a fair one too. But yeah, certainly if you look back through the rest of the races this season, I think this one stacks up really well. And in many respects, I know we've mentioned the altitude, that there are a lot of similarities track to track. So obviously one long straight, you can check on both, and the S section in Mexico in the middle sector, pretty similar to the first sector in Austin as well. So I think there is reason to be encouraged if you're Lewis Hamilton. There is, I think, a good chance that he is the closest challenger. What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, do you know what? I feel like I've said this before this year. I just my faith, my little bit of trust in Mercedes is always a bit shaken because we've had it. What was it, Spain this year, where they were really good, but they always do really well in Spain, apparently.
Not 2-3 next race.
Well, yeah, and then last year at COTA, Hamilton was really good then as well.
That's true. Although he did follow that up with P2 in Mexico.
Very, very valid point. So I would say yes. It looks like these upgrades have worked. And yeah, you got to suspect he's going to be in the mix. He goes very well around COTA. I mean, he tends to go very well around most places. Does Lewis Hamilton?
He has a win nearly everywhere.
Yeah, it's won in almost every racetrack.
But yeah, you'd hope that if the car is still where it was in COTA, then he's going to be in the mix. You'd hope Georgie Russ will be there this time as well.
Be nice when they show up, wouldn't it?
It didn't really happen.
Saw a graphic actually about gaps in average speed between teammates, and Mercedes were the third largest gap between teammates.
Yes, I saw the same graphic because of the two that were ahead. One of them was Norris and Piastri,
Yeah,
which I don't know how much.
I think he was struggling from lap 1 with the damage that he
Yeah,
picked up.
I don't know how much you can really compare Norris and Piastri, given Piastri didn't do many laps.
No, exactly.
So,
It was a worrying race for Russell. Probably one of his worst, actually, in terms of just outright race pace for the whole season.
Not to go on about that graphic now, but that graphic looked all right for Logan Sargent, didn't it?
0.023 between himself and Alex Albon on average pace. I thought that was a really promising sign. He's on the up. He's old Florida man.
Freedom.
Yeah. Freedom for his drive.
Quick shout on McLaren before we move into bold predictions, Harry. Do you think that they could be back to where they were? Like, if you were to compare Qatar to US, do you think it's more likely to be one or the other?
Yeah. I don't know, because with Qatar, we obviously had these enforced stops. Now I'm thinking maybe the tyre wear thing is a bit of an issue for them. I don't know. I would. They're still gonna be up there. That car clearly can go well at any circuit now. And as you say, there's quite a few similarities between Mexico and the COTA. But yeah, they might struggle again if the tyre wear is an issue. Are the tyre compounds the same this weekend in terms of?
I think
selection?
they're the same.
Okay. Well then, yeah, we'll see. I think that pace-wise they'll be there in terms of raw pace. I guess it's just whether they can hang on in there for the whole race. But I suspect they're going to be at least in the mix, little menaces.
Menaces in the mix.
On a Saturday, yes. On a Sunday, I don't think they've got it. I think they've reached their peak. And I think that they need to be wary of a resurging Aston Martin, who showed incredibly promising signs on the Sunday of COTA once they got their setup sorted, and Lance Stroll on the rise. And I think that with this tyre wear issue seemingly becoming a problem, especially on these sets of compounds that you mentioned, that I think they're going to struggle on the longer runs. And we saw how damaging that was for them at COTA. And I think it's going to be an issue here today. Today, you're listening to this whenever, so maybe it is today if you're listening. But I do think that long term, they are going to be seeing a bit of an issue fighting off the resurgence of both Mercedes, Aston Martin, and potentially
Haas.
That is the name I was going to
Sure.
say next. So well done. That's the end of my point.
I think there's the reason I would be optimistic if I was McLaren for this weekend, and you already mentioned the enforced pit stops. Now that's not coming back, but I had a look at last year's race because I wanted to remind myself what happened. Max Verstappen won, surprisingly. Do you remember what strategy he deployed?
Was it the 2-stop?
No, it was the 1-stop. He went from soft tyres to medium tyres. He literally couldn't have done
The tyres are still running now.
basically everyone 1-stops. Tyre wear was all right. So if tyre wear's okay again here, they might be all right, but we'll see. Bold prediction time.
Bold.
Now, there's good news. We cannot physically do worse than the USGP. It's not possible.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but I reckon we're up to it.
Well, what have you got then?
I reckon both Aston Martin's top 6.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, when was the last time Lance Stroll did that?
based on their pace in Austin, that seems reasonable enough.
Yes, both of them. They're coming.
Fair enough.
What have you got?
This one won't sound very bold, but Sergio Perez to win.
I'm still pretty, but he hasn't done it in a while.
Yeah.
It's only 2 this year, yeah.
Going to be a resurgent Perez. Palpatine Perez, or whatever we're going to Emperor
Order
Perez.
11.
Yeah, I think he's gonna win his own race.
I would like that.
I was having a look at the stars last night, trying to
See
gain
Planet
my.
Mexico up there.
Yep, I was just trying to look out for my bold prediction in the constellations, and I found it.
Oh, yeah?
But I actually found it a while ago. I was just a bit too early on it.
Oh.
So when I said Ocon would be top 4 at Zandvoort,
Oh, no.
I actually meant Mexico.
Hold, you're going to double down on just Ocon?
Yeah.
You're an
I
idiot.
mean, they do regularly say that Zandvoort is the Dutch Mexico, so...
Congratulations, Pierre Gasly.
Is this the last race? Do you need to get this right?
Yes.
We're starting
4,
to...
isn't it?
Well, it's for...
4 each, and I've got 1.
Yeah.
So I could get Brazil, Las Vegas, and Abu Dhabi, and we all tie.
Oh, so you need to get this one right.
In theory, to win, yes, or to not draw equal.
To Aston Martin's top 18.
Haas. We'll be on the track.
No, that's a bit bold, that.
There will be a free practice 1.
I've reserved myself to losing, folks. I'm used to it on this show.
Pole 1, 2, 3, Sam.
Pole, Max Verstappen. 1, Max Verstappen. 2, Lewis Hamilton. 3, Sergio Perez.
I've got that, apart from Lando Norris in 3rd.
Lovely. Copy and paste.
Right. Pole, Max Verstappen, the win, Sergio Perez. 2nd place, Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen's going to be 3rd.
What happens?
Slow.
Saturday off.
Forgets how to drive.
Washed.
This is going to Dallas.
Yeah.